Hi, everyone. Hi there. This is just a quickie. This is a Sunday brunch. It's around 2 in the afternoon, so it's brunch for those of us in Central Europe. But it's like about technically 8 in the morning back in the U.S. So you guys are just having breakfast. So it may be more breakfast adequately called breakfast on a Sunday breakfast. Hi there, everyone. Just saying hello and giving a short live stream thing, hoping that if someone sees it, they'll say hi or whatever. Well, why am I doing it today? I was being a bad boy on Facebook, and Facebook today and last night. This morning, I woke up very early. Someone in the apartment park had a dog, and they were like screaming and howling, and I could hear it far away. My wife couldn't hear it. My ears, I hear everything. It just I couldn't sleep after. So I'm up and I made her breakfast. I'll be a good boy, good husband. Made her, eggs over easy. 2 eggs over easy on kind of a little bit pan fried bread. And then I kind of took a little nap a little bit in the afternoon and decided I better do work. I did my stuff for Norwich. I did my Norwich course material, getting the course class questions ready for the 10th week of the course. Only have one more week, and then the start of December term, we're coming soon, so it's like, some of Norwich has been kind of a very quick, 11-week program. Norwich has 11-week class schedule for the course. Tomorrow, this evening, they're going to be turning in their papers. What's left, a handful. We've had lots of drops because many of these people, a lot of the people in Norwich are military people who, for service reasons, couldn't participate. I had basically 3 students halfway through the semester basically drop out because of work. The workload and things like this got. In other words, they did this, and this is the first class in the schedule, so they didn't have a adequate understanding. They may have thought, it's going to be too easy. Well, don't do anything. Internet learning is going to be easy. So no, it's not. Internet learning isn't easy. Internet learning is actually tougher than normal class work because you have to engage. It's you're doing most of the work, and the teacher is only going to be there to kind of help you. And is going to be able to guide you, respond to you. The teacher can't read your mind. In a class, the teacher gets to read your body language and to see if you understand a fuck or don't understand a fuck. You can always tell as a teacher when students are either not paying attention or not caring. Their body language. Body language is in a classroom is the number one mechanism that you can read students. The idea, they're saying, even if they're not saying anything, they're telling you a lot. And online, you get no body language. Zoom doesn't help you with body language at all. So therefore, that's what I was doing a little today. I woke up and I had my idea. I have a little subversive idea, which I'm going to get in trouble for. I was thinking about the two-state solution and how that was basically the same mistake. The Oslo Accords and this two-state solution of the attempting to deal with the so-called Israeli-Palestine question. And there's a big question. What is Palestine? Palestine was Judea. So therefore, this is that this idea that Palestine's for Arabs. No. And Palestine's for Philistines. No. That's not. Palestine was merely the Roman name for the region of Judah, and that which was the land of the Jews, the place of the Jews. That's what Palestine only meant. So it doesn't mean that. All the concern about the Palestinians right now in Gaza is, I think, would be the equivalent of people crying about the Allied bombing campaign in 43, 44, 45 in Germany, because or Japan, Okay, but we're more humane now. No, war is war. And I think people need to grow. Particularly on those on the right. So listen. Okay, I have any reasonable person can have criticism of Israel, a government. But the second you say they don't have the right to exist, and that peace can only come by their ceasing to exist, there's no room for negotiations. There's no room for peace. We have to always understand this in that sense. This is what we have to be. But I have sympathies. Look, secular Jews, liberal Jews, are the enemy of every sane group, including Jews. Okay, they're self-hating. They're anything that self-hates itself. Now we have this in the West today among the Americans and among the English. The self-hating Englishman, the self-hating Westerner, who and a lot of this is brainwashed into the young in education through critical race theory and all this crap like this. Social justice. Well, what you get is people who despise themselves. I always joke about this. I don't want to get in trouble. I have always had problems with this. I said, you see a person who's clearly not, advocating positions that basically suggest that they themselves, the group that they are from, are immoral and deserve to be marginalized and maybe even exterminated. In that case, I want to give them like a. I don't want to say what I'd give them. Say, why don't you do it yourself? Oh my God, you're advocating suicide. No, I'm not. I'm just pointing to the farce. Yeah. When anyone says that, you have to say that's farce. That's a farcical thing. No one seriously means that. People say a lot of stupid, unthought out things because they want to show their solidarity with the oppressed. Well, if you believe, hate to say this, anyone who advocates the oppressed to rise up, knowing that they're probably, the assumption is, they're going to always be disadvantaged. Well, that is a recipe for mass murder on their part, because that's not going to change anything. The powerless, to encourage the powerless to rise up and rebel is a form of trap, because the powerful will wipe them out. So no, that is not the strategy. The strategy is to appeal to justice. Yes, appeal to justice, but not a justice that based on, you're totally illegitimate. You're bad. No. The claim of justice always has to be a point. Like anything in reason, we have to agree on the axioms. We have to agree for there to be communication, for there to be a communion. There needs to be some common reference point that we have to share and agree upon. We have to agree upon the terms and the meanings of the terms. If you don't agree about the meaning, you're just talking at each other, not communicating, and that's a big problem. And this is why this issue is a very tough issue. I have I have a lot of sympathy with those on the alternative right on their critique of liberalism and stuff like this. And I can sympathize with concerns about Jewish influence. That is something that always going to be. However, I think once you exaggerate it and fetishize it, then it becomes a pathology. And I kind of agree with. I wish Jordan Peterson would. Because he says it a lot. He says it all the time. But and he says been saying on the Gaza his video about his tweet, clarifying his tweet about what hoping they'd catch hell. But I'm going to say that he perhaps needs to explain his argument here. I think there is an argument about resentment and this idea that people who have a kind of victim-based idea that they're the victims, and victimhood plus resentment tied with envy produces something really monstrous. Okay. Um, you can see this in Hitler. Anyone who studies Hitler, Hitler has always a victim. The young Hitler always saw himself a victim of forces, victims of forces. And then when he went to Vienna, he saw these forces manifested in the groups who blocked him from being able to do his work at the art university, which he wanted to do. Not that he thought maybe he wasn't that good, but at the same time he was a provincial and not, although a lower bourgeoisie, but still a provincial, and not someone from the high point of Viennese culture. And the circle of Viennese culture had if you go study turn of the century Viennese life, the role of art and culture and the role of certain people in it, you had a very interesting thing about this. This is a thing that the Jews always had a higher rate of row and artists, and but in other words, they you see this on they as percentage of the population, their rate in certain professions have a higher rate. That's a fact. Okay, this is not Jewish. This is not an anti-Semitic conspiracy. It becomes an anti-Semitic conspiracy when you then say, well, that means that they're totally in power. No, just because they have a disproportionate rate in professions and things doesn't mean they're controlling them. Okay, I think that is when it goes too far. You go too far. You take your point. You take taking a valid point and making it too extreme is that. And I know a lot of the American firsters, the Groypers and that, who like this idea that you have the Israelite APAC and Israel lobby. Now I understand where this comes from. This is as much John Mersheimer and crowd. Not is that Mersheimer? Was it Mersheimer or was it I forget the other guy? Um, um, it was Mersheimer's book about the APAC and Jews and the influence of Jews in foreign policy. There is this whole mainstream liberal elite education view that has basically presented Israel as white occupiers, and therefore part of therefore Israel is a colonialized and occupier on par with the other Western European colonial occupiers, and therefore oppressor in this model. And the idea of here is that this is a problem in that sense, and that the Jewish idea of Jewish influence. I mean, this reminds me of the 1990s in that sense. The Jewish influence question in the 1990s was a big one. Edgar Vidal criticized the idea of the neocons. Remember the neocons? Many of them were Jewish communists who became former Trotskyites and other leftists. They were Jews, democratic, who played it like any minority. Remember, the Democratic Party of the 1950s attracted not only southern rednecks, but also northern labor forces, but also northern and midwestern immigrants. Okay, and therefore you have to understand these contexts of these things. And that in New York City, there was a very powerful community of Jews, and also they played a very important role shaping the intellectual culture of cities like New York in of the early 20th century. Okay, and up into the 1940s, 50s, and people like Hannah Arendt and people. It goes onwards. That was and of course they weren't all Jewish. Some of them were Protestants. You had to remember the whole New School. The creation of the New School was mostly created out of the Protestant elite at the time, like Thurston Veblen and Charles Beard, the progressives of the turn of the 20th century, helped create the new school as kind of the new alternative plays, right, against the older traditional things, more modern social science, modern critique, more open to questions of socialism, things like that. And what happened was the new school also attracted, as in the 1930s, as the Rockefeller Foundation was using means of money to help people going to be persecuted by Nazis, Jews and intellectuals and liberals and artists and scientists who were going to be persecuted by the Nazis, a way out to America to get the benefit of it. And they brought academics, Jewish academics. And one of the group of Jewish academics was the Frankfurt School. The Frankfurt School guys, who were basically not hardcore Marxists. They were Marxists, but they rejected revolution. They thought it was going to be, they were more systemic. They were arguing for systemic structures. You had, and also the young, I forget his name, Walter Benjamin, who was very much influenced by Schmidt, who was influenced by Gramsci in that sense, Gramsci and Schmidt, the cultural idea of money. And the role he played in the Frankfurt schools of this, that will eventually even lead to people like Habermas. Habermas is the later generation of Frankfurt, right? The post-war generation of Frankfurt. But Marcuse and those crowd. It was the idea of culture, the role of culture. Marcuse, Adorno, and gang, who looked at with the eyes of the understanding from someone like Heidegger. Heidegger's scientific revelation, mixed with Marxist, led to this new thinking. My God, they played. They were brought over, and you had lots of it. Hannah Arendt's husband was a communist in that sense, and critical of the communists, but still a communist in that sense. Arendt herself saw herself as a person of the left in that sense. If you look at this, the New York crowd, New York thing, you had it. There is this, and there's a hysteria in them. Anyone who knew that New York Jewish intellectual crowd, there was a hysteria. And you read Hannah Arendt's letters to Mary McCarthy, and about the rise of Eisenhower's election. And my God, the rise of I saw the election of Eisenhower was, oh my God, Hitler's coming to America. The hysterical reaction. This crowd of people, these intellectuals, these left-wing intellectuals, which Jews played a significant number of them, intellectual Jews, embraced this idea. Now, they were Democrats. They moved from the Democrats, but they were also. Anyway, I want to talk about. I don't want to really go talk any more deeper than this, but I think it's important to understand they played a very important role in shaping the modern Democratic Party, pro-New Deal party. They supported the New Deal in that sense. They liked the fight against the New Deal was not. It wasn't a communist party. It sought to. The New Deal was an attempt to. It wasn't. Rooseveltian New Deal was not a Marxist revolutionary thing. It was like a Bismarckian kind of preventing. By addressing social needs, it was like the same welfare. Remember, Bismarck, the man on the right, creates the welfare state. So, in many ways, what Roosevelt was trying to do was co-opt the left, prevent the radical left. Roosevelt was not a revolutionary. He had progressive ideas, but we have to understand the progressives were not revolutionary; they were evolutionary, and they also were the elites. They were intellectual. They were the intellectual elites who looked at the existing order and saw the system didn't work anymore and thought they were going to fix it. They were the scions. Most of them were the scions, or the future generations of the original Puritans. Okay, you have to remember that in that sense. Or then the people that were influenced by them. So I'm ending. I want to think about that in that sense. So therefore, when the Groypers attack, this idea of the Jewish lobby, they created in Israel, and then the Jewish lobby and therefore the Groypers were, did their campaign against Republicans who America must, there's legitimate reasons when American first, American interests. When American interest and Israeli interests don't ally, anyone who says we must do what Israel wants us to do, that's a problem, and that's something I think there's a legitimate concern here. We have to remember that you know, uh, you know, there's lots of problems with what Israel spied on us. Spied on us and is spying on us as we spy on them. Everyone spies on everyone else in that sense. That's not they're not doing anything that we're not doing in that sense. But at the same time, um, Americans have a problem. They have a sense. The average American doesn't expect the world to be that way. That's kind of a naive, and that they think, oh, we've done you, we've helped you, we looked you out, so you should appreciate it and like us, right? That's that attitude. And what happens is when people you help then snap at you and then do things that harm you, spy on you, like the Godfrey case or the USS Liberty incident in '68. Now, the USS Liberty incident was an act of betrayal by us, the Johnson administration, who was, in pursuing their pro-Arab policy, was spying on Israel and was probably feeding the Egyptians information, okay, while in a war. So the question is, and this is something Angelo Caldavila clearly addressed this in many of his work about this, and he's right on this. The more you look, I mean, therefore, I know people. This is, I think, in many sense, people like Nick Fuentes and those crowd who have interest with this because of liberty. The liberty thief, they proved they attacked American ship, and they don't. Okay, yeah, that's true fact. They did that, but it was our fault. We were in the Johnson administration was having that ship spy on the Israelis and providing the Egyptians information because they thought by giving the Egyptians information that would be advance American interest in the region. You have to remember, in 1968, America does not really become a fan of Israel, even though we got independence. America was not really a fan of Israel. We were more in bed with the Saudis. I mean, we replaced the British. We replaced the British in the Middle East after the Second World War, and that was that we were in bed with the Saudis and the Persians, which means the Iranians. And in fact, the Persians were our best buddies. Okay, we gave them the best equipment. The Shah, we helped. We could argue 1950s. We put the Shah. We basically put up, this weak leader, this minor leader, as the leader of Iran against maybe a so-called democratic parliamentarian force, but a left wing, one controlled by Moscow. Let's have no foolishness about this. Moscow was funding this. We have to remember Moscow invaded northern Iran and had communist agents in northern Iran influencing and creating revolutionary movements. You have to remember, even to this day, the communist influence in the Kurdish areas are still very strong. Like you have in Syria and in Iraq, and that some of the Kurdish groups are communist. They were funded by the communists as a weapon, as a way to do this. So you have to understand that this is the case, and that's why it's complex. So, the same thing with Arende. When you want to say, everyone, oh my God, if we just let Arende get the nice social, Chile would have a democratic. No, I'm sorry. It would have followed the path of Cuba and then later Venezuela, right? The failure to intervene in Venezuela effectively or reduce it was a sure way to make sure that what's his name? The regime. He's dead now. In 2001, right in 2001, there was a short time when the Venezuelan military couped and they had him prisoner, but because the Americans didn't really tell them to go kill them, what's his name? Chavez. They should have killed Chavez if they were going to do that. You're going to make a coup, you got to kill him because he was more dangerous after. Okay, he survived the coup and he basically eliminated the coupsters. Anytime you try to coup and it fails, You're just, the coup. If you're gonna do a coup, you have to do it so that you can succeed, because there's not going to be success afterwards. And in fact, usually things are worse. So, this idea that Allende was this nice democratic leader, nonsense. He was a Soviet agent. He was a direct asset of the Soviets, and they would have used him to form a Soviet regime. That was the reality of the Cold War. Let's have no foolishness about this. Let's have no foolishness about the nature of what was going on. And the same thing with Iran. Iran was our best friend. Iran in the 50s, 60s, and 70s were our best friend. In the 70s, we gave them the state-of-the-art military technologies. They had F-14s, they had M60 tanks, they had the new weapons, the brand new tow systems, and things like this. They had the brand new post-Vietnam equipment right away, and they got the best state-of-the-art stuff. Even when the Saudis and other Arab countries didn't get such things, they only got the Arabs and the Sunnis, the Saudis and their Gulf states, only got new American stuff starting in the late 80s and early 90s. And Israel only really starts getting the U.S. stuff in the late 70s, very late. So after Yom Kippur War, as the Nixon administration, 72. Do they give them access to things? And what happens here is that this is the big thing about this. So you have to understand this and that light in that sense. And we have to always remember the weirdness that, when we lost Jimmy Carter's human rights fanaticism, lost us we lost us a lot of places because of it. Not Nicaragua went the communists got hold of Nicaragua, and the rise of the Sandinistas. Latin America was heading to hell. The spread of rebellion through Nicaragua and from Cuba was spreading all through the Central America at the time, both in Honduras and El Salvador and even Costa Rica. Now, you have to remember this was the Cold War. This was called the Cold War was fought. Go read the Mitakin Archive, Volume 2, about which talks about all the archive information about the Soviet activities, and they're about to win. They're about to win in the 70s and 80s, and everything just goes poop with Reagan, okay, because Reagan knew how to play the game against them, and made them go into an arms race they couldn't afford, and go into new technologies they couldn't innovate as fast with, and therefore they were in troubles. So we have to remember that America's best friend in the Middle East was always going to be, was Persia in that sense. And Turkey was a kind of military. It was a military dictatorship for a long time. It was it was not religious. It was secular secular Turkmen and Muslim state. It was very hostile to this. Only in the 1990s and the rise of Erdogan do you have, late 90s and the rise of Erdogan's AKP party, AKF, I forget, AKP, I think, a development and freedom party, some of that, a development and I forget, freedom party, which not freedom party, but development party and economic development party, which was Islamic and followed the path of the Islamic Brotherhood in a sense. Which sought to use Islam to reunify, and instead of having the Turkish myth, a secular Turkish myth that Ataturk did. So we have to understand the geopolitical realities of this. And there was Islam as the idea of Erdogan wanted to use Shia religion, not Shia, Sunni Islam, in the path of the Islamic Brotherhood, echoing the Brotherhood in many ways, what happens in Egypt and elsewhere. A kind of an idea of a re-Ottomization of the Middle East, which, by the way, that the Arab world. The Arab world has two phobias. The Arabs have two phobias. The Arabs have a phobia of the Turk. They hate the Turk, and they hate the Persian, because the Persian is as and there's another phobia. The Sunni despises the Shia, and the Shia fears the Sunni, right? That's the religious dimension. Then you have another dimension. You have the Persian, the great empire. The Persian is a cultural dominant where the Arabs are hillbillies. They're tribal people. There's tribal people, uh, not hunter gatherers, but more like pastoral people, not really tied the same way. So you have and the idea of the Ottomans were the Caliphate then that turned into a dominant political system of the region up there, that replaced which captured Constantinople and took over the Byzantine Empire through domination, right? But this was also maintained its power and authority over the Arab world. The Ottoman Empire controlled much of the Arab world except for Persia. Persia was a competing power against that, and hence there was a cultural Turkish versus that. But then the Turkmen dominated the Arabs. Okay, so therefore, this is the fear of the Arab. The Arab has a fear of being dominated by either the Persian, which is older, the tradition of old. The Turkish man is only around 1,000 years old. The Persian several thousand, 2 or 3,000 more. Not, I mean, not about 1,000 years old, if not a little later. But then the highest point is, my God, the from 600 to that, from 600 A.D. to 1500 to the 19 teens, with the collapse, 1918, with the collapse of the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and the rise of modern Turkey under Ataturk. Right, you have all this wonderful understanding of what's going on in this sense of this aspect. Israel was just, the British and the American Foreign Service was always more pro-Arab, because the Arabs were our ally, and the Persians were the dominant ally, and Turks and Persians were going to be allies necessary geopolitical allies against the Soviets. Okay, they were necessary geopolitical allies to prevent the Soviets from coming down and grabbing the oil that was necessary for not only us but for Europe and for a developing Japan and South Korea. And that was always been the reality of that situation. So, what about Israel? But Israel only became a better American friend after 78, 79, when the Shah fell. And there was no longer and actually the problem with the Shah fell, when the Iranian Revolution gets top state of the art U.S. equipment. And then a year later, in 80 to 86, will be the Iraq-Iran war, which the Arab world, the Saudis were furious with us. The Gulf states were, because what this did was the Shia were going to come down and conquer. That the Iraqi army was just not able. The Iraqis were just equipped with Soviet crap, hand-me-down Soviet crap, compared to the state-of-the-art U.S. equipment. And the Persians and the Iraq, and even though some of the officer corps was eliminated, a good deal of the NCOs and junior officers were sufficiently, played along with the mullahs to get promoted and get power, to rise in power from the older class conflicts. There was a military that was even though the mullahs were great, were radicals, the army still was professional in that sense, and that therefore what happened was you had opportunistic military junior level officers who used this as an opportunity, and senior officers who used this opportunity to get out the older pro-Shahist leadership. Okay, yeah, this is a major understanding of what's going on here, and that and why do we and why how come we know that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction? Because the fucking Europeans sold them it. They gave them, the French gave them nuclear technology, and the Germans and the Swiss gave them biochemical weapons. Why did they do that? Because this was the only way to balance the weapon. We weren't going to sell them our equipment because we couldn't trust them. They were Soviet proxies. We couldn't trust them. They would sell the stuff to the Russians, so we couldn't give them that stuff. And the danger was if we did not do anything, they would be overrun by the Iranians eventually, even if the Iranians are not. The Iranian did the better leaders were gone, and yes, they had nice, good equipment, but they had no parts. They couldn't get. In other words, once the equipment started breaking down over time, in fact, this was what led to the Iran Contra scandal, right? Because we helped the Iraqis by giving them chemical weapons, and they used chemical weapon gas weapons against the not us. America turned a blind eye to the Germans and the Europeans doing the dirty stuff. We weren't going to sell our stuff because we don't do, we do research in it, but we're not going to give you them. That'd be too much. We would let them use the German stuff and use the older European stuff, and not have our hands on directly on it. We just permitted it, and also permitted the Egyptians, admitted third parties to sell them Soviet equipment held in, competing with the Soviet equipment the Israelis and the Egyptians had, and that we were sending to Afghanistan to help that. That's the biggest. All the Arab nations were kind of switch each after the Arab-Israeli thing. It means Egypt-Israeli thing. When Sadat made peace with that. Anwar Sadat made peace. What he got was the Egyptians got modern American equipment. They not the best stuff, but maybe from the second, third generation, and therefore they were cannibalizing and selling all their Soviet stuff. And the Israeli had captured a lot of Soviet stuff through the wars. So therefore, you had this whole big supplies that then all of a sudden we could now give them to Iraq. Right? We started had to sell Iraq, or also give them money that they can then buy, give them access to resources and trade with France and Germany, that which then would give them currency that then they could buy new stuff from Moscow, which again we turned a blind eye to. Because why? Because the Saudis were screaming at us because we let the Iranians come in there. So what happened? Then the thing flipped. The Iraq-Iran war flipped, and that was just a major thing, in the sense that all of a sudden the Iranians were losing. Why they were losing? Because one, they weren't really winning. The new weapons and equipment that the Iraqis were getting resupplied. The Iranians weren't getting resupplied, and they had to turn to the Soviets and other people. And since they were heavily engaged in spreading war against the jihad against the Soviets as well as the Americans, they were kind of engaging in the Soviets actually feared giving them aid. So therefore, it was other countries like Albania and other places, Soviet era thing, and even would start selling them new equipment. The problem was getting U.S. parts, and this is when Iran-Contra scandal came in, that they thought they could negotiate with the Iranians, helping selling the Iranians U.S. parts for their American equipment through Israel, not directly through the U.S., the middlemen, and that make profit and then give that profit to the Contras, right, as the whole way they can bypass the Boland Amendment. So we have to remember that. So Israel doesn't really become a good American thing, an ally, until the 80s, like late mid 80s and early 90s, and they had their own interests. They had their own interest. They couldn't trust us. They were scared that we were going to change sides left and right. And I guess I understand. Now, this is where I can say I didn't have a problem with the Groypers telling some of the Republican speech guys, like the congressman, I forget the guy, the ex-Navy SEAL or one-eyed guy, I forget his name. It's slipping my mind right now, and a couple other people, or even Charlie Kirk. Israel is our best ally in the region. This throwaway line. Okay, yeah, it's an ally, but it's not a long-term ally. We have shared interests, but we also have divergent interests, and so the question should be, well, okay, yes, they're our ally, but when American interests are divergent from Israeli interests, would you vote to secure American interests, or would you pursue policies that would help Israel but either harm or not benefit America? Okay, would you put Israel in interest of Israel above that of America? Now you can say, "Oh, you can't ask Jews that question. That's the divided loyalty argument." No, but it's a valid question. It is a valid question in that sense. You have to ask that. This is a true thing. Who your loyalty lies with. As a citizen, your loyalty should lie with your country, your homeland, your thing. This is why the line of when I was reading in the Rousseau reading that they recorded yesterday, it was how powerful Rousseau's political economy is, and that in terms of that, just in chapter 2, in the second section where he talks about freedom, about citizenship, patriotism, love of country, and what is required for the education of citizens is the love of country. I don't know. I had a weird thing about this because I've been fighting. I've been having problems. Today in Warsaw, thank God it's raining, so it's gonna be less. There's gonna be all these Europeans crybabying about Gaza, and to be honest with you, it's like, why? Why? I mean, would you complain about it? Would you think? Would you hold those same opinions regarding the Nazis being bombed, stopping the Nazi bombing? I'm sorry, no. I mean, you're using Godlem's war. You're breaking the thing being Nazis. But I'm sorry, no. We waged when we're in a war. You're defeating. Civilians are going to get killed. A lot of them are going to be. Look what happened to Dresden. Look what happened to most German cities. Look what happened to most of Japan. Tokyo and all the major Japanese cities were flattened, and hundreds of thousands of Japanese civilians were killed. Maybe even millions. We don't even know these full numbers of the number of Japanese civilians killed. But the Japanese were also murdering and butchering people in China, okay, in Philippines and things like that. In other words, it's not. And that we weren't intentionally seeking to exterminate the people. We were just trying to destroy their war effort. And the way you destroy your modern warfare, I hate to say it, you have workers and the industrial parts are as much an instrument of war as soldiers in the field are. That's the nature of modern war. So you have to destroy the economic means, and given the economic means are within the same urban areas where populations are going to be, you're going to kill innocent civilians. This is a consequence of the nature of modern warfare. And you have to have the stomach. This is what the lesson of this American Civil War was. With General Sherman, who says war is hell. War is hell. War is brutal. And thank God it is hell, because we'd have more of it. In other words, we don't want war. We want to stop war. And its horrible nature makes it less desirable. I've always said this to my people: to understand the Holocaust, is you have to understand that it was in the war conditions and the height of the war conditions that the extermination of the Jews in the new policy came up. Because it was the Nazis, as they began Operation Barbarossa, they go into, okay, yes, they did it earlier. They exterminated, they killed enough elites and things like that, as they always did in the Eisengroupens in the beginning of a conquest. They would take out the political enemies. The Nazis would always take out, the Eisengroups would come in and take out political enemies. The SS and the Eisengroups would come and take out their political enemies whenever they went. But in Poland, they also targeted the Jews, and that targeted Jews elsewhere also, but not in 39 like this. But it's only with the operation of Barbarossa do they start doing the more organized Eisengroupens, which then had started liquidization of the Jews in that sense. And they did this in the conditions of war. In other words, it was war gave them the means to do this. In other words, even if you look at something like the November 9th, Kristallnacht night, it was a failure from the Nazi point of view. They're expecting, it was a big thing, there was like things, but it was not the purge, it was not the program that the Nazis themselves envisioned for the population. The population really did not, the population did not stand up and defend the Jews. Some did, few did. There are examples of this, but there was not the kind of massive uprising and massive purging that the Nazis thought would happen. Okay, we have to always remember that. And this is why the nature of and there was massive protests on race policy and questions of race, Jew policy, particularly intermarriage problems and the courts and the protests of the wives. It wasn't that it was nothing. There was some, but what some there was, it wasn't an overwhelming protest against what was being done, but there was some, and enough of protest that Nazis felt threatened and therefore had to make it secret, right? And particularly their later policy in Weimar, at the Wannsee conference, and that was even very important. As this is why understanding the Wannsee conference very well to understand what was going on here. So. I'm not a fool. I'm not going to say, what happened on October 7th and what Hamas did in that was on the par with what the Nazis did to Jews. The nature of Hamas, even the slogan that, a U.S. Congresswoman retweeted from the Jordan to the sea, Palestine shall be Juden-free. I'm adding the word Juden-free, but that's what it means, right? Free, Juden-free. It's how is Hamas any different than the Nazis in this sense? And could you imagine what would happen to a member of Congress who, in 1940, openly said, on 41, openly said the extermination of Jews was a good idea? Yay! Yeah, I don't think he would have remained a congressman long. Or congressperson long, right? Yes, there were Nazi movements and silver shirts and things like this, and the American first, there was the German American Bunds and things like that. But in fact, it was those guys discredited American first. Okay, in other words, because the Bund and the Nazis used American first to do their, and this is the problem. This is one of the things that defending American first policy is today in this thing is to say, listen, it's not the same as that. It's American first does not mean what the stupidity of those of the Bunds and the silver shirts. For what they were doing, or this was not a pro-Nazi, in other words, a pro-Nazi or a fellow traveler program. The Nazis were like the communists. They engage in active measures. They were trained by the communists, and that's active measures to destabilize and demoralize. This was done. Propaganda, information, misinformation. And Russia, China, and Hamas and Iran are doing these things as well. So we have to be a little realistic about this. I'm sorry to ruin this on Sunday. This is a very dark thing. I mean, one of the things I was thinking about is how the American foreign policy establishment has not learned the failure of Vietnam. The failure of Vietnam was what? Not about fighting the communists. No, it was perfectly all right to stop the communists. Okay, what was the mistake? Was not invading North Vietnam. In other words, the North Vietnamese never accepted the two-state solution. The Ho and his Communist Party was Ho Chi Minh. Ho never accepted the South Vietnam as a non-Soviet. They wanted a unified. They say he was a nationalist. Yes, he was a nationalist Bolshevik. He was a communist, nationalist communist. He was going to unify this. He was a communist. He was going to use national. Embracing the nationalist means to justify communist control. He was more pro-Russian than Chinese. In that sense, he was more a child of Stalin and that thing than the Chinese Mao. What happened will be that's why in 1978, 79, the Chinese will invade Vietnam and purge out the pro-Russians. That which led to, ironically, this is what led to a huge number of Vietnamese coming to the Soviet bloc as escaping from Vietnam. So the anti-communists fled to America and the West, and the Russian communists fled to the Soviet, the Warsaw Pact. There is weird stories on this aspect. But the idea of the two-state solution, which drives any discussion of Israel, we have to remember that the Palestinians themselves in 1947 reject the original United Nations two-state solution and did not recognize at all Israel. So therefore, there was never an acceptance of a two-state solution. This was a stupid Western diplomatic idea, and it actually echoed this stupidity of the solution in 1947. It was a temporary solution in Vietnam after the liberation of the French. You had that split between the two sides of the two sides of the revolution against the French colonization, the nationalists and the communists. And the difference was the nationalists had control in the South, and the communists had control tied to the China and its military resources up there. And what happened was and you had a struggle instead of, and when it was clear that this was going on, that it was not a civil war. This idea was a civil war. No, if we accept the two-state solution, then it was not a civil war. But if you deny this, then you can say it's a civil war. Maybe we should get involved. Well, but then the question is, whose side do we want to win? And then if that's the case, it was a civil war, then we should have allowed the South Vietnamese to go and the U.S. forces to invade, bring our tanks and romper stomp them. But that would bring China in at the same, not the same argument. Oh my God, we can't actually win. We just want to fight them to get them to negotiate. That's a lose-lose situation. Fight to get to that was go watch the HBO series, The Path to War, which shows the folly of Lyndon Johnson on this idea that, we don't want to win. You're going to get a wage a war. You want to wage a war to win. Okay. Have your, you need the goal should be victory, defeat of your enemy. What does defeat mean? What is your goals? You have clear, defined goals. That is, what does defeat mean? Now, I know a lot of people say, Ukrainians have that problem too. It's forever wars. Well, no, the Ukrainians have a definitive a goal. That is the removal of Russia from the 1991 recognized borders of Ukraine, established by treaty with the Russians signed, with the United Nations recognized, and all European states recognized in that sense. Both in, and then later it was reaffirmed with the Budapest Agreement by Russia, England, United States with Ukraine, promising that they gave up their nukes. We give them security guarantees. Protecting the integrity of their territorial sovereignty, and the sovereignty of their control of it. Now, the goal is restoration of that. There's no endless war there. Now, the Russians may never accept that. Okay, yes, but they have a clear goal. It's achievable. Yeah, it's achievable to some degree. The Russians are basically having problems achieving their goals, the elimination of Ukraine and marginalization of it. So it's again, this is how war does. War needs goals. The Johnson administration's goal was to force Ho to go to negotiate. Then he was going to buy him out. I'm going to do it. Go watch the path to war. It reveals the mentality. And by the way, this is the mistake of the Republicans. Nixon should have welcomed the Pentagon Papers. He should have welcomed the Pentagon Papers and say, this is what happens in the Kennedy-Johnson administration, and used it to discredit Democratic foreign policy. But no, he then, gets the plumbers and tries to, catch who leaked, the leakers, the plumbers. That's why they come to the plumbers. And this led to Watergate, right? This is and ultimately led to poor Nixon being kicked out. And then that's a whole nother story. So why was I reading about this? Why am I at a little chat today about this? Well, because I was thinking about the two-state solution and saying, listen, the same fallacy. In other words, my God, the Palestinians elected. Okay, Fatah, PLO, Fatah in the West Bank, there, right? But in Gaza, the Hamas is there. Financed by Iran. Okay, Fatah is just as bad as that. They don't recognize that. They're just not as militant as that. They're not. They don't. They're now saying, "Oh, victim." They're fellow travelers in the same cause of this. They're more moderate fellow travelers, but they don't accept. They're not willing to accept this. But the people of Gaza voted for and elected their tyrants in that sense. And so and don't uprise. They do not uprise. In other words, they don't raise up against their Hamas things. Oh, how can they? They're helpless. Well, no, sorry. I'm sorry. Not a valid argument. If they really oppose, they object that they're being used this way, they support, and they're being brainwashed. They're being educated. The Hamas controls the education, and the United Nations, the aid money goes in, and then they steal the aid money to use it for weapons to attack Israel. So, this is not a good situation in that sense. This is a really bad situation. You can't have it. This is how can you have a two-state solution when one party, the Palestinians, who, by the way, no Arab people want. We have to remember this. None of the other Arab states want. Because why? Every time they have been, they go there. They fuck up those states. Jordan, they were there. They were so bad they caused chaos. The PLO was in Jordan. And what happened? King Hussein on Black, 1967, 68, Black Tuesday, Black Thursday, where he just slaughters maybe 100,000, maybe 200,000, we don't know, drives the Palestinian Authority out of Jordan and Jordanian-controlled areas. And they go to Beirut, Lebanese Civil War. It's so bad that in Egypt, on the Gaza area, the Egyptians did the same against them. Didn't want them. Didn't want to bring Gaza into Egypt. Didn't want the Palestinians going. They already have a problem with the Brotherhood. They need more fanatics in that sense. Jordan won't take them. Syria won't take them. No one. Who's going to take them? What? The Saudis won't take them. Saddam Hussein was their hero for a while, but that's. I'm going to stop here. I'm at my tight water mark. I wanted to say that this is one of the thoughts I had up on my Facebook question. Two-state solution. Why don't I talk about this? I don't know why I'm talking about this. I just feel like I needed to get it off my chest. It's gonna get me in trouble. It's gonna get a lot of people gonna my right wing friends going, oh, how dare you do this? You're just a Zionist. No, I'm not a Zionist. I'm sorry, I'm not a Zionist. Maybe this idea. Am I a Zionist? No. In the sense that I believe the state of Israel should exist, I think yes, it should. Why? Because it made Jews normal. I mean, only by being a nation did the Jews cease being subversive forces in the other countries. They still are to some degree. They are aspects of subversive, but they would have been far worse without Israel. In other words, by making them a normal nation and giving them patriotic feelings, you make them not the subversive revolutionary force, or an asset that subversive revolutionaries can use. So no, I mean my argument about that is anti-radical. Zionism is a conservative force, not a revolutionary force. It is not a global Zionism. This is wacky. But Zionism seeks to rule the world. They're ethno-nationalists. What is Israel but an ethno-nationalist state? I mean, I get someone like Zoni gets mad at me when I say that, but it's true. It's an ethno-national state. So why do you get mad when other ethno-nationalists talk ethno-nationalism? It is just it's natural. You have that is one of the means of identification that nations have emerged out of. I'll stop, and I got one person saying thank you. There was a lot of interesting historic food for thought. Yeah, this was. Thank you. It is. I'm going to stop. I'm tired, and I should make some videos. But happy breakfast, those of you. Happy brunch, and those of you in Europe. And happy breakfast. Today, there's going to be a riot in the center of Warsaw. Of course, this is a protest about this. But I got the warning from the State Department. So please keep away. Keep yourself a low profile. No, to me, it's like seeing a Palestinian flag is like seeing a Nazi flag raised now, to some degree. This is the problem with these people. They're radicals. They're waving flags and doing like this. Why? It's silly. It's being part of the cause, being part of it's showing your virtue. It's virtue signal. It's virtue signal of the worst sort. Okay, that's it. If you like it. Put any comments, questions, and I'm not going to do this all the time every Sunday. I just did it today because I felt grumpy. I didn't get much sleep last night, and this morning the howling dog woke me up and had me kind of like, oh my God, what's going on? So I didn't have much sleep, and I was thinking about this question about the two-state solution, in the sense that how Vietnam shows the folly of this, and the American diplomatic corps just believes in this no matter what, even though even though the evidence suggests that it won't work, and that can't work unless the parties agree. In other words, as Ho didn't accept the South, the Palestinians are not accepting Israel. So therefore, unless all the parties agree, you can't have a two-state solution. It doesn't work. And this idea that there's a utility point that they'll buy into is just nonsense. No, this is existential. It is them or us in that sense. That is no in that sense. It is, and it's so that therefore this is a massive problem in that sense. You can't get a equitable you can't use interest because the lens of economic utility is not at play here. It's existential a question of uh, 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 basically shaped by a ideology, a religious based ideology that echoes what the Nazis believed. In that sense, it's a totalitarian ideology that has no room for the alternative. There's no openness to the fact or interest in it. This is what Hannah Arendt in The Origins of Totalitarianism, which I think people should again always read. Her discussion of what made the Nazis Nazis and how a totalitarian ideology emerges and how does it affect things. This is very useful in this discussion to understand the Islamicists in this sense. And this is not I'm an Islamic phobic. This is silly. I mean, not every person who believes in Islam is an Islamicist. It's Islam plus modern ideology. Islam turned with postmodernism, with a kind of radicalized politicization, turned into an ideology. Okay, and this is something of the Islamic Brotherhood. That's a whole question of like the rise of the Islamic Brotherhood. I forget the Egyptian guy's name. Quib, or what happened with the entire Ayatollah Khomeini. There's two types of this radicalization. There's a Sunni thing through the Brotherhood, and then that merges from the Brotherhood to something like Al Qaeda and other things, and then there's the Shia base out of Iran and the mullahs. So therefore, let's stop here. If you have any comments or questions or themes that you want to do of here, this is off that base of that. Please put them below, and I'll assume that if you liked it. We've had people like it. We have people not like it. Okay, I understand. If you like it, hit the like button, share people, tell people that this happened. I'm not promising to do these again regularly. I just did this, like I said, because I had this, get much sleep, and I said, okay. You didn't like it? Now this, and say why. You're just a Zionist. You're just a radical Zionist who just think, Israel can do no wrong. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, I know the thing, drill. The gripers get mad at me because okay, my answer to the gripers is ask me, who do I pick America first? Yes, even though I live in Poland, right? I'm an American. I'm an American citizen. I am an American. America is my country. I'm a guest here. I have sympathy towards it. It's my second country in the sense that where I live, and I'm going to have my future tied here for the unforeseeable future, given the hellhole America has become and the unemployability of being able to go back to my home country. I'm an exile in that sense. I understand exile as much as anyone else. But I'm still a patriot in that sense. So I'm not going to, I'm still going to be looking at it critically. So what I'm saying here, so therefore, if I'm asked if American interest or Israeli interest, American interest. Sorry. When American interests and Israeli interests are in, I would call statistics means that they're in the same way of, not causing, but C word, correlating with each other, overlap. Yes, then that's okay. That's good. We can work together. We can share an interest when our interests are tied to the same thing. Yes, or when it doesn't cost us anything. There's no cost, and that this is we in other words, okay, this time you're going to help us later. We expect then you to help us when it doesn't, not benefiting you. If you're not going to help us when we need help, and because it's not in your interest to, then we should retaliate, not retaliate, but act in kind. Well, I'm going to stop right now. Take care, everyone, and have a good Sunday. Again, put your comments and questions and things like that. Don't like. Social media links below, academic social media links below, the normal spiel. Take care. Bye-bye. Yes?